Hello, everybody. I am apparently live. Welcome to the How the Heck Do I Play Crosskeys stream of the Crosskeys Mentor Tournament Boots Camp. I am Alaszun. For those of you who don't know me, and I guess for those of you who do know me, I have been an admin of the Crosskeys tournament since, I don't want to say since its inception, because there was actually an early version that happened really early, but in every single version of the modern Crosskeys tournament, I have been a tournament admin. I have made some deep bracket runs I've played through. Basically, I'm a fairly experienced veteran of the game here. But so what I want to do tonight is I kind of want to hope to take you through, as somebody who is going through and racing Crosskeys, like, what do you do? How do you analyze a seed? How do you make decisions? Things like that. First and foremost, I am reading chat. I can see chat. It's up there. If you have questions, if there are things that you would like me to cover, especially like when I'm in a section and I'm not getting to something you want, by all means, go through it. I will do my best to get to your questions. If I miss something, you're always welcome to DM me on Discord. I super don't bite. I am not frightening. But that's kind of what I'm hoping to get out of this video for people. What I'm not really going to try to do is to try to go into the like very, very basics of Crosskeys. Like, I'm not planning on sitting here and explaining what does crossed entrance shuffle necessarily mean. How do I generate a seed? What are the trackers that I'm going to? You'll get lots of opinions if you ask people in terms of things like that, and there are a lot of people who are happy to help. So with that all kind of out of the way, I'm just going to kind of play a seed in the background while I'm doing some of this, but let's get into what I want to start with. So for particular, I want to talk about openings, because that is usually where people start seeds. So if I'm starting a seed, there's, for my mind, two major openings that people will go through. There are some variant people that will run other things, and I'll talk a little bit about some of the things that they run. But the two of note are kind of Sanctuary Start and Houlihan. And I'm going to start with Sanctuary Start because I think right now Sanctuary Start has become the more popular of the two openings, even though it's not the one that I personally. So Sanctuary Start is fairly simple. You start the game, you start at Sanctuary, you get the item. Of course. And you'll walk out of Sanctuary. And the thing, and I'm going to pause the game here for a second. The thing that makes Sanctuary Start maybe a little more difficult to run, but also, and yes, Melmo, if I find the flute, the first thing I'm doing, no matter what I do, is straight to CAC in the fastest way I can. But basically in Sanctuary Start, and I'm going to pretend for about 30 seconds that I don't have a flute, the thing that makes it a little bit more difficult for people to run is that there just isn't a stock standard formula for what you do with your start. Basically, you have 7 different spots that you can start in Sanctuary, and most people will do different things depending on where the start is. So this is one of the more interesting ones. This is Pyramid. Hi, Pyramid. Most people, if they're starting in Pyramid, are just going to walk here and walk straight to the item and save and quit, because there is not a lot of things to do other than that. Check the Pyramid item. It's a key. I guess I should probably pick that up, even though I'm not really going to play the seed. But that Sanctuary, let me talk through a few of the other spots that you can start in while I do this, and I'm going to try to walk myself to them while I do that. Unfortunately, since it's Pyramid, I'm going to spend time doing this, and yes, I intentionally skipped Link's house there. So Hyrule Castle, for my money, is by far the most boring and bad spot to start in Sanctuary. Hyrule Castle, you don't really have a lot to do. You can walk up here, you can huck bushes at guards to get a prize pack, pull the tree. The guards decided to move bad for me because I didn't actually start from Sank. And check this, and you're kind of done. And you kind of have to force yourself back to Link's house. Some of the other CAC ones are a little bit more interesting. If you start in the well or if you start in Magic Bat, you can just kind of attack CAC right away. This is kind of what makes Sank Start a good opening and a playable opening for people, which is that if you go to CAC right away, it is the densest cluster of entrances you can get as fast as possible to clearing what you want to clear. Similarly, if you get placed in Useless Fairy, you can just go straight to doing a Houlihan, and then you're Link's house, except you have 200 rupees. The other locations that I haven't covered, Lumberjack, Lost Woods, Sanctuary, you'll usually find that people do some mixture of just checking nearby entrances and finding an excuse to save and quit early or find an early connector to take. I don't necessarily want to go into what you do in every single because I think that's more of an open question. So I'm going to talk about Houlihan as the second one, and I'm still going to pretend I don't have a flute here. So Houlihan is a Link's House start. Houlihan is a very, very different opening than Sanctuary. The purpose of Sanctuary is basically to sit there and say, I'm going to rush the densest thing I can right away. It's a good strategy. It works very, very well. A lot of people run it, and of course I'm because I'm being recorded and watched right now. But Houlihan instead is, and I'm do this, is going to hit basically this spot here, is going to do a fake flipper to the side, and then hop into this world. And it will then swim up here. Check the potion shop entrance here. I as well, I like to do that. And one of the things that you get out of Houlihan is that you get a lot of coverage and spread of some various like prize pack coverage that you might not otherwise get. So for instance, when I come up here, I'm always going to kill this pickle because I'm searching for bombs. I'm searching for something just to give me some early resources. And so if I hadn't already gotten full magic, I would have come up here and grabbed it. But you check potion shop. You don't have money yet, but you at least know that's a bomb shop. This is an entrance in a somewhat out of the way place that you've already knocked off. And I am terrible at hula-hitting right now. Apologize. Except not really that much, because I knew I was going to be terrible going in. If you watch my recording of my dry run I did night, I said, oh man, I'm going to be terrible, and then I was great because I wasn't actually on stream. But the way Houlihan closes has some variation, but you get to come up here, you check Useless Fairy, which is probably the most difficult entrance, or drop down to route in. Drop 3 times into the water. I know it is. I usually do it with a diagonal up left. I'm also half paying attention because I am trying to talk and get through stuff, so my execution is going to be significantly worse than normal. But yeah, fair enough. Sorry, Malmo. I'll stop contradicting you. But basically, this puts you in the Houlihan room, which gives you 225 rupees. Why are 225 rupees good? Because there are shops that sell bombs. Getting bombs is good. There are several different variations that people will run after they finish the Houlihan. Probably the most popular one, this is not the one that I run, but I'll show you anyway, is to basically just hull up here and walk straight to Hyrule Castle. And your goal here is basically just to check Hyrule Castle and then save and quit. You take the sign up here. You huck it at this dude. You check the tier 1 tree pole. In this case, a really, really nice bounty, because one of the reasons why I'm maximizing tree poles and stuff, and here's Ganon, is because I'm just trying to find ways to guarantee I have resources. And I'm going to talk a little bit about sort of why that is in the next one, but I wanted to at least just sort of introduce what the common ways of starting here, and then you go in here. We already know the Turtle Rock run. I'm not going to show it to you again. And I am going to take a deep breath, so I stop talking quite as fast. Sorry. I think the second variant that has been... Yep. So the second variant that has been gaining more popularity, exact reason chat, is to kind of come here and do this like Hylia version. Which is, I come here, you hit a sign, you pick up the sign, you hit this dude. You pick up a bush, you hit this dude, and you pick up a sign, you hit this dude. What I just got is I got coverage on 4 different prize packs right there. That's half the prize packs in the game. That gives me a very, very... pick up at least 1 bomb from one of those 4 prize packs of the Pokey, the Guard, the Octorok, and the Arrow Guard. If you can get a bomb in there, like, it just is nice to have a single bomb, because if you walk into an entrance and you find a Gina's Cave or something similar, I was hoping to find a Gina's Cave just to be perfect, but alas, you get the ability to actually come through. Then I will check this. I will check this other entrance. And if one of these is a connector, and like here, like this is a bomb shop, so if I hadn't already gotten 10 bombs, okay, I'm taking bombs. Now I have my resources that I'm going to need to take me through. If one of these is a connector, I almost always follow it. From here, saving and quitting is fine. You're also completely welcome to continue on to Eastern. My usual metric, which will determine continue, is if I were to find a mini Moldrum Cave, could I clear it? There's nothing right or wrong about it. Crosskeys has a lot of subjective opinions. It just is the one that I tend to use because that is a high-value entrance, sometimes find, and walking to Eastern is relatively slow, and so I prefer putting myself in a position where I'm going to have to do that twice. The last thing you will sometimes see from people hula-hanning, and you'll usually see this as a standalone start in a second, is to basically either rush straight to Hyrule Castle, or more likely, you will see people rush basically straight to the Sacred Grove and try to farm the bushes. A lot of people are going to know about this, but in case you don't, this is a very, very spot, not even just in Crosskeys. But when you go to this clump of bushes here in the Sacred Grove, two of these spots, this diagonal here, and this diagonal here, are a 50% chance to get bombs. And so if you're coming here with absolutely no resources, you can make sure you want to by resetting the screen that you can do your best to be like, hey, I'm going to grab at least one bomb. And then usually they will continue to go on. If I were playing the seed normally and had actually started and had my flute, this is also what I've done directly after I would have come here from the south and just started checking CAC. Other useful things to mark sometimes, entrances like these. I usually like to mark what is my best rupee farming entrance if I need to find one. This is probably the second best reusable rupee farming entrance in the game. All these pots have 5 rupees under them. I think the archery game is the single best one in the game, and so I will use one of these just in case I happen to need it. Answered your question before you asked. Leave, sorry. But basically, I like to know if I happen to not find money early and I need that money. If I need that money, what am I going to do? But basically, more or less, your routes are going to converge into saying, hey, I need to go through here and I need to sweep these early entries in the game. And so that's actually going to transition me to the second thing I want to do. Is I kind of want to talk 3 sort of main strategies see people use to evaluate what they want to do next. And I call these 3 strategies worst case mitigation, EV rush, and best case rush. And of note, I almost never play exclusively one of these strategies. More often, I'm kind of mixing these strategies, and the strategies depends on which phase of the game I'm in and how this is going. Very, very early on in the seed, that I tend to do what I call worst case mitigation, and this is actually why I happen to run Houlihan, even somewhat favor between people, which is I want to try to minimize my time here minimizing order. So I basically want to say, if the seed is pathological, if it's being as absolutely mean as possible, what can I do to make sure that I'm still in as good of a position as I can? Sorry, hold on. Let me check my voice settings as well. I'm going to drop my voice activation as well if it is getting that. No. Okay. All right, now you're going to hear basically everything I say for the rest of the time because I turned it off auto. Hopefully that fixes it, Simple Clips. But basically my goal here, if I am focused on worst case mitigation, is I want to say, hey, I want to find a way where I am not going to orphan as many things as I can. Something in the early game that would be affected in how much you prioritize that thing would be, do I go to the Eastern Palace area versus do I go to the South Shore area? The South Shore area is a little bit faster. It has a little bit better entrances, but it also has a glove rock. And so if I don't have a glove, I might push... Actually, hold on. And can someone confirm, by the way, that my voice isn't cutting out anymore, or let me know? I'll look at stuff if it still is. But basically, I want to know if I'm going to the area, can I do everything that I can in the area? At least so far as I want to go through and be able to check all the entrances that I can. Similarly, you'll see something like, hey, I just found a connector here. Connectors are interesting and cool. They let you go to places that you may not need to be, but there's a cost. If I were to walk through this connector and I were to get locked out, in fact, let me just walk through this connector, and hopefully for entertainment purposes, I'm going to get locked out here. I still want to go to Kakariko Village. By the way, I would have activated my flute before I do any of this. Okay, I didn't get locked out, so I'm still fine. But theoretically, if you get locked out there, my next play is still to go to Kakariko Village. Nice, vanilla. I'm still going to go to Kakariko Village from here. And so really all I've done is basically said, hey, I need to save and quit. That's a thing that I hate doing if I'm trying to cover myself from a worst case position. But basically often I'll just come up here and I'll route through, and yeah, Granny's a nice connector, and thankfully I got lucky this time. This is Spec Rock, and similarly, like, if I was doing this in a race, I would not be rushing these connectors. Specifically because if you look at where my starting spots are, they're pretty bad. My spot at the pyramid is basically useless right now, and so all I have is Link's house. And so I'm going to be, personally in this, I'm going to be very, very worst case resistant and basically just play about as stock safe as I can through that. I will usually check the item. It will kind of depend. If I'm planning on not going through the connector, I'll check the item right away. If I'm planning on going through the connector at the end, what I will end up doing is I will clear out this area, then I'll walk back down and I'll use that to check the connector. Basically, it's a matter of if I'm going to go through or not. And I probably would have gone through. That's a great question, Maniacal. I tend to think of about 25% of the item pool as useful. And realistically speaking, if I were actually playing the seed, and I probably should have done this, like, I would have checked the item here. I have not seen the rest of CAC. I'm just doing quick math, I think there's 9 entrances left that I haven't checked in CAC. It seems very, very unlikely, especially because even if I come into CAC, even if I don't find a connector in CAC, I can still leave from the north. I can go to the Lost Woods. I can end up at Sanctuary. Like, all of these things, and I mean, it's useless, but who knew that? All those things are things that are like, you know what? It's pretty unlikely I'm going to want to come back to Spec Rock, especially because Spec Rock, frankly speaking, is a garbage connector. It is slow. It is long. This is the slowest way to go through Spectacle Rock because you have to walk all the way up. It's not a particularly appealing connector. Now, if my start spot was in the well, in the start spot was in the Magic Bat, all of a sudden it is really, really easy to get back here to Kakariko Village, and so I'm a lot more likely to see a connector, and I'm about to go straight through it and see what's there. I already checked Smith House, sorry. So that's kind of what I'm talking about when I'm talking about worst case mitigation. I think Spec Rock is actually a really nice angle for that. The next one I want to talk is EV, or expected value rush. And yeah, and actually having the flute would be another thing that would make me, and I would have had an activated flute by now, or at least I wouldn't be taking any connectors until I activate the flute. But having the flute is another thing that basically adds value to connectors, because you can quickly get back to the area that you just came from, which greatly defrays the cost of the worst case that you get. Anyway, I think the second thing, and the one that most people will be doing for most of the game, is kind of what I'll call EV rush. Basically, EV stands for expected value, and Maniacal already asked how do you ballpark an EV on an item check, and I think it's a very, very good question, a very good thing to keep in mind, because those things fluctuate over the course of the game as well. But basically, I want to go forward and I want to see, hey, what is most likely to be the thing that I'm going to do that is going to yield me progression? And so I'm going to come here and I say, you know what? CAC is a very, very heavy thoroughfare. I want to go there. Or, you know what? Like, all I have left is, and I don't now, but hypothetically, if all I have left is I have a glove now, and I have the Glove Rock and Ice Rod Cave, or I have the Mitz Rock on East Death Mountain, I might not want to run over to the Mitz Rock, because all of a sudden that is a lot of walking for a thing that is, statistically speaking, not all that much more likely to be all that useful. And I think when most people are playing, this is kind of their North Star number, is expected value. Basically, what can I do to guarantee that I'm going to get as much return from what I'm doing as possible? And frankly speaking, I should also probably just be dropping down and drop downs, because I've already found Ganon. The main risk about dropping down is that if you find Ganon, you have to save and quit. Or I guess if you have Master Sword, you can fight him, but that's weird. But either way, that's kind of the second thing. And then the third strategy, and in my opinion, this is a strategy that only really starts coming into effect when you get really, really close to the end of the seed, is what I like to call best case rush. basically, if you look at the seed and saying, hey, if the seed wants to align perfectly for me to finish as fast as possible, what are the plays that I would do? And for obvious reasons, this is really, really dangerous early on in the seed. Lovely. We have so many connectors in CAC. This is actually a great use or a great exhibition of the power of the flute. Yeah, and I think the orthogonal version in non-entrance would be like an Ice Rod and Turtle Rock Gamble is kind of a best case rush, and it's one of those things that people do when they are Ice Rod from Go mode, but they're not necessarily going to rush Ice Rodless Turtle Rock when you have other dungeons that you might need to do. That's a great question as well, Maniacal. I'm going to defer that a little bit because I think that's a really, really interesting point to talk about. I will just tell you quickly that my answer is somewhere between 2 and 1 item from Go mode, but I will hopefully talk more about that later. And if I don't, please call me out on it because it's a good thing to talk about. Usually the way best case rush tends to work for me is when I get like 1 item from Go mode and I'm not at 6 crystals and I'm just like, hey, I need to clear all of my dungeons. That's about the time you will start seeing me going, what is the best case play I will make? I'm going to rush my dungeons. Who knows? Maybe Mothula will have the big key that I need to beat the game. And actually, I think it was one of my semifinal matches this year. Literally, Mothula was the first crystal I did when I hit was 1 item from Go mode and had my Go mode big key. And it's like, okay, I guess we're in Go mode. Like, I didn't expect it. There was no reason for me to think it was. And I wouldn't necessarily be making plays that would be like, hey, if it's not here, I'm completely... in a bad spot. Shout out to me, by the way, for not cursing there. I tried really hard to curse there. But those are the sort of things that you make. Yes, absolutely, Buyer. ABCD is a very, very generalized form of a best case rush. Sorry, what was that? But yeah, as you're going through, you're just going to be kind of clearing through, and those are kind of the framework, I think, to evaluate people on how you do things. So let's talk about the phases of the game, and you've kind of seen me play the early game so far. But I kind of divide the game into mostly 3 phases. The first phase that I divide the game into is just kind of the exploration phase. I don't know why I did this room terrible. I mean, I do know why. It's because I'm trying to talk at the same time. But the exploration phase is just kind of, I'm going to do as many checks as I possibly can. I'm not going to skip anything that I see because I don't know what I'm going to need. I don't have nearly enough information to say, oh, I can skip left side Meyer in this case because I'm super close to Go mode. I'm not. I'm roughly 26. Okay, I'm probably more like 30 items from Go mode at this point. Not even, well, depending on small keys if you want to. And I'm just going to mess up this room horribly on stream. But basically my goal in this one is to basically check as much stuff as I can with an express goal, which I will obviously sometimes violate, but it is a goal of going in and saying, hey, I want to avoid making orphans. Orphans, if it's not a clear definition, basically is a check that you have that is in a spot that does not have anything else around it, and so for various reasons you are unlikely to want to come back to it. I try very, very hard to avoid this. It is not always avoidable. It does happen, and sometimes, and like I said, like this is where like you mix your strategies. Sometimes I will leave orphans because I'm like, hey, I have a better play that I want to do. One thing that I think is the defining skill at this particular phase of the game is the ability to think ahead while you play. While you go in and while you're playing, you're usually forming a plan. Like, after I save and quit, I have a rough plan on what I'm going to do after that save and quit. Okay, thank you. I will go in and I will say, like, hey, like, I'm going to save and quit here, and I'm going to go to South Shore, and I'm going to check the dam, and I'm going to walk to Mini Moldrum Cave because I have the flute. That is a particular example of what a plan might be. There's one lingering question, though, that you should always have in your mind, which is, I did not want to come here, which is basically, what do I have that can change my plan? And specifically what that is like, it's impossible to think through every situation that you could possibly run into. Like, I'm going to check the dam right here. One of the first things I do after the flute almost always is just flute to 7, check the dam, check the Moldorm Cave, if I haven't done it already. But if I am doing this, there is some set of items. It may be a 0-size set. There may not actually be anything, but there are items that could conceivably change my play. For instance, and I'm going to pause right here before I open this. If I see Eastern Palace here, what do I do? If I see the Brothers Connector, what do I do? If I see Paradox Cave, what do I do? That's one version of this, and I think one of the things... okay. One of the things that helps define, like, you can sort of really tell experienced runners from people who haven't practiced nearly as much as they've done, is they will basically do something like this, is they will walk into this entrance, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000. No, I don't want to do Eastern Palace. Whereas if you watch Wally come in here, it will look a lot like this. That's not a lot. 3 seconds isn't a lot until you do it 25 times across your seed, and all of a sudden you've cost yourself literal minutes trying to decide what to do. And if you're not used to this, by the way, you can also, like, early see what the entrance is a lot of time by watching the expanding thing. So, like, if you watch the bottom of the screen here, you can see it's Eastern Palace before the entire screen shows up. And so, if you are at the point, and the way that you make these quick decisions is not because you are really good at making these decisions, it's because you have thought ahead and you have said, what are the things that I could run into and what can influence my decisions? For instance, I personally always dip Eastern Palace. I am not wall kicks. In fact, I made wall kicks dip Eastern Palace in the finals because he was worried about me dipping Eastern Palace. But basically while you're going through, like, if you've made these decisions, it makes it so much easier to get through your thought process. And this isn't a quick and easy thing. This is a thing that comes with a lot of practice with the mode. Most of the time that you're doing this, you're too busy going, okay, I need to dodge these balls. Yep, okay, now I go up here. I need to check the shots on the right. And as you get better, as you practice more, like, this becomes much, much, much more automatic. Like, I'm barely... Okay, well, you can tell I'm barely watching the screen because I just did that, but I'm, like, barely watching the screen right now. Like, I'm actually... This game is all on my right monitor, and about 80% of my vision is focused on my left monitor, which is where my script is and where the chat is. And these are things that I think can help you develop stuff as you get along, is to just say, hey... and the way that I've tried to teach it to people that I've mentored before is to basically say, always have the following question in your head. What am I doing? What is my plan to do? And what is there that can change the plan? And you don't have to be great at this. You don't have to think through every single possibility, but putting conscious effort into this skill so that you know, hey, these are things that I should be thinking about and should be considering. You will get better as you do this. Like, it's like any other skill in life, where it comes with extra practice. You will be able to say, hey, I can make these decisions really, really quickly. So that's kind of the first phase of the game. And some people have rules. Some people never dip Eastern Palace. Some people always dip Eastern Palace. Some people always rush through any connector you see. These aren't right or wrong decisions. They're just different things. And that's totally fine and totally reasonable for any player. And I can come up here and espouse, I think this is the right decision. But truthfully, the only right decision that people actually have is what is the way that you think that is the right way for you to play. Excellent job releasing that sword there, me. Yeah, like, different playstyles work for you. Like, I always talk about Scholzer as a player who terrifies me, because Scholzer is an incredible player of Crosskeys. And most of you have probably not had to play him in the mode before. But if you have, he is a nightmare to face, and he's particularly a nightmare for me to face because we have such different play styles from the way we play. I tend to play a fairly conservative style of play where I'm just trying to avoid making orphans. I'm just trying to be safe. And Scholzer's just like, all right, I found a connector. I'm going. Oh, great. Scholzer's here. I mean, I call you a nightmare all the time. So this shouldn't surprise you. Basically, that's going to cover most of your early game that you're going to be going through these things. You're going to be hunting for some key items that are really going to unlock the seed for you. things like the flute, like a glove, like mitts, like flippers, like a mirror. Al, I actually think that's if that is a helpful bridge to get you there, it is perfectly reasonable for you to take the bridge that way. Like if you just say, "Hey, I'm going to pre-make my decision to say these are my hard and fast rules for this dungeon," that is totally fine. One thing that I think is a very, very useful guide as well that didn't get factored into what you just said in your question is being able to go in and say, where is this dungeon that I just found? Because I think that's a very, very important question. Like, if I have just walked through Spiral Cave and it spit me out at East Dark Death Mountain and the other entrance is Eastern Palace, I'm dipping Eastern Palace. It doesn't matter. Like, it's so bad to get back there that if I'm forced to do that later, I feel like I've lost so much time that I'm just going to take the hit and do it. Even if I don't have my preferred items for it. But I think it's a super reasonable thing to start with, hey, I'm going to make this call. And as you get better and as you get more experience, you can start factoring in these other factors as you come in. But yeah, basically this early game is finding your items that are going to let you move around the world. So your moon pearl, your flipper, your mirror, your boots, your hammer, you're not going to find all of them. Your glove, your hook shot, like all of these things are useful things to find and things that you're really going to need to open up the seed. Once you open up the seed some, and unfortunately I haven't opened up the seed at all, I have a flute and a sword. I should probably check these drop downs. I'm kind of half playing because I'm also trying to talk through this. But once you have that stuff, then you can kind of move to the second phase of the game, which is what I kind of think of as the do dungeons, do density phase. Specifically, you have some stuff that you have to do. Most of the time, if you're in a neutral state, it is not going to be a bad decision. I could not tell you offhand the number of entrances. I would have to look at my actually hold on. I would have to look at my tracker. It is probably something around 60 or 65, maybe a little bit more. There are probably about 30 or 40. No, I'm way off on numbers. I don't want to give you numbers because I'm just gonna be very, very wrong. But you're asking really good questions, Maniacal. And I'm still going to defer on that because it goes into exactly the question that you were asking earlier, which is like, how much value do you put on a particular entrance or a particular connector? And to be fair, honestly, I do a lot of this personally just by gut feel of I know what I see and I know what I've done. I also, you can't see this quite as well, and I'm on a crop stream where you can only see the game feed, but like, I have an item tracker running at the same time. It is tracking all of the caves that I have found for me. So, oh wow, I actually was pretty decent then with my guess of 30. I am tracking all of the caves that I have found that like have items, and so I can very, very quickly at a glance look at this map and do a quick sort of analysis on how much value is there in the world right now, and I absolutely do. And you'll find different runners do this in very, very different ways. Scholzer just listed how he did it. I'm sure a lot of people who are playing are running the Telethar fork of Sushi's Entrando, which basically just auto tracks what your shop entrances or what your item entrances are that you found. But yeah, basically in this second phase of the game, as I transition back, you're going to go through and you're going to be, I'm going to do the things that I can. I'm going to do the crystals that I can. I might do the somewhat dense pendants that I can. Truthfully speaking, in Crosskeys, every single dungeon is juiced to some degree. Eastern and Desert aren't particularly juiced. They're probably the two worst dungeons in terms of density, but almost every other dungeon, every other dungeon except for Hera, that drops a prize literally has at least 8 items. Ice Palace goes from 3 items in open to 8 items in not open. Misery Mire goes from 2 to 8. Another useful thing to think of, by the way, is the value of this third entrance. It's not always valuable, but I will oftentimes find myself trying to get to the mountain as soon as possible, because if this is a useful entrance, I want to be able to get there. But basically at this point, I'm just going to start going through, and I'm just going to be saying, hey, what is the densest cluster of X that I have open to me? And I'm going to rush straight at that. And that might be, what is the densest cluster of entrants? It might be, what is the densest cluster of items? I'm just going to kind of be going for density, and to a degree, I'm going to be trying to clean up some of the orphans that maybe I was forced to leave early on in the seed. Like when, if I were forced to come down to Stousher early in this seed, and I had to check this cave, like, if I have the flute now, you're going to find me a lot more likely to come down here and just quickly flute to 7 and lift that rock. If I had found a strength upgrade, which of course I didn't. Another item, I called out the mirror, but just as a particularly useful item in sort of this part as well, is a lot of people refer to the mirror as the best item in Crosskeys. That's because when you use the mirror, you can often double clear the entire game. If you get an early mirror and you get an early moon pearl, you can often find yourself in situations where you visit areas in the dark world that you haven't been in the light world, and all of a sudden you're cutting your travel time in half. Not quite in half, because there's still mirror transition costs through it, but it helps a lot. Finally, so basically you go through, you do your dungeons, you do all of your heavy things that you have to do, and that usually puts you into the third phase of the game, which I kind of call the one item from Go problem. And I think personally this is the hardest. And Schulzer raises a really good point here about how valuable it can be just to actually know what the decision, like where your spawn is, to make your decisions and make them easier. I think one item from Go is the hardest state in the game, and I think it's true in just about every mode in Link to the Past. Basically saying, what are the corners that I cut? So Maniacal asked earlier, and I want to talk about it a little bit more right now, which is, when do you flick that switch? And to me, it literally feels like a switch flick, because I know when I'm playing, I go straight from, I am clearing absolutely everything I see, within reason, to, okay, now I'm only going to do fast things, or I'm only going to rush things, because my goal now is I want to hit Go mode. And for me, that marker is somewhere between 1 and 2 items from Go mode, depending on how the seed has played out, and depending on what the items are. Like, if I'm Hammer in a Swamp Small from Go mode, or I'm Ice Rod and a Turtle Rock Big Key from Go mode, that's going to change the way I'm going to play very, very differently between those two particular modes. Because the Hammer locks a ton of stuff, whereas the Turtle Rock Big Key, especially you have access to Laser Bridge, and the Ice Rod combine to lock 2 items in the game. Not a particularly valuable thing that you're going to want to do. Sorry, needed a quick drink. Talking a lot. But oftentimes, when I'm doing that, there is a kind of weight that I am giving on how much do I value entrances and how much do I value items. And Kamarai just kind of, I don't want to say undercut my point, because they just beat me to my point. And yes, Maniacal, all of this is absolutely calibrated to the race that you're playing. If I am against somebody who I am like, I am so much better than this person that there is no way that I'm ever going to lose to them, I am going to do every single check I see, and I am never going to skip a thing, because I don't want to create a window for them. And so just about everything I say is going to be trying to calibrate, hey, I'm in a head-to-head race against a comparably skilled opponent. That being said, I think more often than not, people hurt themselves trying to metagame in this than they help themselves. I think more than anything else, you're going to find yourself in a position where you think you're being clever and think you're being smart, and you're going to shoot yourself right in the foot. And so my general recommendation on metagaming is, especially early on, don't. Like, literally do not think about it. Don't be like, oh, my opponent might have done this. Like, it's really just... nice vanilla high roll left. You're really just kind of putting yourself in a position where you can't do anything. Or like you can talk yourself into, like, if you are constantly shadow boxing a god route, you are setting yourself up to lose. And we all have, I'm sure every single experienced runner in here can talk about a time where they convinced themselves their opponent absolutely nailed the god route and they lost the race by 1 minute because they did stupid stuff trying to catch up. Or have convinced, okay, I've definitely lost, and they've ended up winning by 2 minutes because guess what? Your opponent often makes the same mistakes or the same choices that you would have made. Yes, more than once. So really, I kind of have the two things I try to think about when I'm one item from Go, and before I say anything, I'm just going to start. There is no algorithm and no solution that will stop you from last locationing. It happens to everyone, and it will absolutely happen to you. And that is sad, but that works. That's a good question, Dane. How does that kind of gel with clearing with the best case scenario in mind? Is I will often come through here, and when I'm deciding whether to skip something, I am kind of like when I say what I said when I was introducing the three styles is you never really play a single version of that style. You don't just blindly say I'm going to best case rush every time, because if you're best case rushing every time, you would basically go in and you would skip every single item, you would kill the boss, and then you would leave. And you would lose 99.9% of your matches playing like that. But what it does mean is something like, for instance, left side swamp. I'm a lot more willing to skip if I'm one item from Go mode than if I'm 2 or 3 items from Go mode. And so it's really just kind of a mixed strategy of those things that you might end up doing to say, hey, I'm going to look at what my options are and do that. But yeah, like you might skip left side swamp or you might skip Mire cutscene. And actually Mire cutscene brings me to kind of the second thing I'd like to bring up, which is really when I'm trying to narrow down I'm in one item from Go mode, what do? I have 2 guiding principles. I do not usually willfully ignore freestanding maps, but it's a time cost thing. So I would not have, if I had blinded Lumberjack, I would have been perfectly happy to get that map, but I usually am not going to walk out, drop down, walk through, grab it, and walk back out. Like anything, almost all of these things you can give a dependent answer. But my 2 principles that I like to go for are rushing density and considering logic. Rushing density is simple. Find the spot in the game. I absolutely would normally get a map from Mushroom Spot. I just, as I have said many times before, am not playing at full capacity here because I am doing this. But rushing density is exactly what it sounds like. Look at your map, look at what is the spot that I have the most stuff in, and decide what to do. And rushing density actually comes with a couple of different things. So one is, it's important to evaluate how much is an entrance worth to me right now. If I'm sitting at the end of the game and I have... Nice. I have, let's say... What do I say? 6 entrances left, and I'm tracking my item caves, and so I know of those 6 entrances, I have Spike Cave, and I have King's Tomb, and I have no other item locations left. Even if I see a spot and I say, hey, that is a spot that has 3 entrances that I haven't checked, that may look dense, that doesn't look dense to me, because on average, these entrances are worth 1/3 of an item each. Right there. And so as I'm doing this, and there's about a 900% chance I died in this Poke, by the way. I try to talk through it. But as I am doing this, like, I know... Oh, lovely. I know, like, there are 2 items left in the game that I have not found the caves for. And so even though the entrances may seem appealing, they're not. On the other hand, if I'm going in and I haven't found Misery Mire yet, even though it's a pendant, if I haven't found Hype Cave or Mini Moldrum Cave, those 3 entrances might be worth on average like 5 or 6 items. All of a sudden doing that versus climbing GT for 4 items looks very, very different. And so I always try to keep in mind, like, what is my balance points? Picked a hypothetical number, Leaf. I always try to keep in mind, what are my balance points to understand how much is an item worth to me right now. And I don't have a hard and fast rule for it. It's really kind of a gut feel thing that I have developed in experience. But that's kind of what rushing density is about. It's about saying, hey, what is the place that I'm going to find that has the most items, and how do I rush to it? The thing that is important to note from this, though, is that do what you must almost always comes first. So an easy example of this is to say, okay, maybe I'm not missing a ton of items, but my ag is in Lumberjack and I haven't found Castle Tower yet. That's not a particularly dense set of items, but I literally cannot beat the game without finding Castle Tower. Even if it is less dense, you are going to see me checking entrances trying to find things, because I still need to find Castle Tower, and I might be able to find my item in Castle Tower. Those things help. I could actually even give you just a personal story of this, is that when I was playing in, I think, the first version of this Crosskeys tournament, my very first matchup against Number Play, I died to Crystal Vitreous in this scene. And I end up getting my bow at Dam, and I beat all the dungeons that I can, and I'm now one item from Go Mode. I need a Palace of Darkness Big Key. And I look at this and I said, you know what? I'm going to climb GT. It has the well. That's 9 items versus going back to Vitreous and getting this 1 item. It's significantly better. Even if the pod Big Key had been up there, I still need to actually go to Misery Mire and kill Vitreous. Lovely. So, I climbed GT. I got all 4 items. I got the well. I didn't find my pod Big Key. I went back to Dark Shopping Mall for Misery Mire. I killed Vitreous. I got my pod Big Key. Number Play finished while I was fighting Helmsword King for my 7th crystal. Like, that's the kind of thing where it said, like, hey, I did not listen to do what I must. I went for density instead, and I did it wrong. It's a lesson that has stuck by me literally as long as I've played, because I can so clearly remember that scene. The last thing I think that is also worth considering is considering logic. And this is a really hard skill, and it requires a good amount of concentration and memory, or a good amount of note-taking if you are of that variety. And that is going in here and saying, hey, and I don't even know where I'm supposed to go. I haven't been tracking at all, so I'm kind of lost on this scene. But I need to go and say, hey, I want to make sure that what I am doing is in logic. And sometimes it matters and sometimes it doesn't. Like, if I have a item that I have found in the... If I am Swamp Small Key for Go Mode, that's locking 9 items. Let's say I find the GT Big Key in the Palace of Darkness Big Chest, but I only have 4 pod keys. That is locked by 6 pod keys. I am missing 2 items for Go Mode. It is not out of the question. In fact, it is super reasonable to say, hey, there's a good chance one of these pod keys is going to be in Swamp Palace behind this key. And so I'm not going to go to Ganon's Tower and climb, or I'm probably not going to go to Ganon's Tower and climb. I'm not going to swear to a single... I make very, very few definitive statements all of the time. But that's going to drastically increase the cost to me of any of those checks, because I am not sure that they're in logic. Sometimes it's very simple. Sometimes it's a lot harder to remember. Like, if you have 1 Misery Mire Small Key and you found the book in the left side of Mire, and you found the Hookshot and Bombos tablet, maybe I'm not going to rush Pendant Swamp Palace, because I'm still 2 Mire Small Keys short of being able to make this at all a reasonable play. None of this is like I said, like, there aren't hard and fast rules, but if you can do a good job of keeping track of what do I have, what's in logic, and especially if you can do it transitively through keys, you can very, very frequently just eliminate things that are just, I cannot do this spot for my go to mode item. This is locked by my go mode item. And the bigger of a go mode item you have, so like if you have a hammer go mode, if you have I need to find an entrance go mode, all of these things can help inform that. And so these are things that you can help make your decisions. And I think the last thing I want to consider, and I can go into a very, very, and I could just kind of go into Q&A after that, is I kind of want to ask the question, what do you do when you're stuck? And this question always has the same answer to me. What do you do when you are stuck? You do something. I just said a bunch of things about like, oh, I'm not going to do stuff that's not in logic. Like, oh, my GT climb is out of logic. You know what? If my GT climb is out of logic and all I have left is GT climb that I can think of, yeah, I probably messed up, but I'm still going to climb GT. And I'm probably going to be spending the time as I climb GT going in and trying to come up with the, what did I miss? What have I done wrong? Like, exactly. It's literally just thinking time. So the other thing to do is to kind of, you can always go back to your VOD and try to, like, if you have specific things that are like, hey, I remember this as a nexus point, or something weird happened at that moment. Like, oh yeah, didn't I almost die at this chest at Ice Palace? Maybe I actually did die and I forgot to open this chest, or maybe I had to skip the spike chest because I didn't have enough health to get across. These are things that are not very common situations, but like they'll usually stick out in your mind specifically because they are not very common situations. Also, things to do while you're stuck is to kind of go over when Wallkicks has his video for Boots Camp and goes through gotchas. Like, learning what a lot of the gotchas are can really help you get to a point where you can get to the point where you are, and I'm actually just going to put my controller down because I think it's hurting more than helping at this point. But it can help you get to the point where you are like saying, oh, I forgot I can go Turtle Rock right to left as a connector. Or, oh, I forgot I can go through the top of Bumper Cave with the hook shot even though I don't have the cape. Like, some of those are just very, very obvious, quick kind of, oh yeah, I might have forgotten that things, and so just doing a quick checklist of those things can also help. And after that, like, even going to your VOD, looking through it, all of those things can help you learn these things. So that's kind of what I do when you're stuck. Cool. So I'm just going to start hitting questions now from the chat. So first, Maniacal asked, what's the best way to verify the relevant points of small key logic? So in my opinion, the best place to verify the relevant points of small key logic, the dungeons that it makes the most sense are Palace of Darkness, Ganon's Tower, and Misery Mire. Palace of Darkness has very, very important set breakpoints at 1, 4, and 6 keys, where depending where you are in the dungeon, your items are either 1 key locked, 4 key locked, or 6 key locked. And so usually when I find an item in one of the places that are 6 key locked, I try to make sure I make a mental note for myself because I don't take actual notes. Some people make actual physical notes with this to say, hey, I found a Misery Mire small key in the Pod Dark Maze, and so maybe I don't need to do cutscene chest. Those are the ones for me personally. TR is not bad if you can do it. Usually the entrances tend to be accessible, and honestly, like, you want to learn all of the logic if you can, because all of it can be helpful, but those are the ones that I think tend to be more impactful. What I will say about Ice Palace is that in entrance mode, Ice Palace almost never has small keys in relevance to logic, which is to say that almost all the time, right side of Ice Palace is hookshot locked. The only time right side of Ice Palace is not hookshot locked is if the big key of Ice Palace is directly on the right side. Not locked by, literally in one of those 3 check. Anything else, and it's just automatically always hookshot locked. And that goes into kind of a conditional versus non-conditional logic, which is kind of a more advanced topic than I want to get into today. If you would like, I definitely wrote an essay about it in Tark like a month ago in the logic discussion, and you can try to read it up there. or I can try to point you to it. Yeah. All right. How does keeping things in logic change with Retrance, or is that outside the scope of this video? I am much more of a Crosskeys player than I am a Retrance player. That being said, I think logic still matters in Retrance, but I think it matters substantially less. So Retrance, as long as you have access to a shop, is always going to assume that you have enough small keys to go through places, and so all of this stuff about like transitively remembering small keys, that just kind of falls off. Because I don't think I've ever seen a seed in Retrance where the thing that it hinged on is you can't get to a shop to buy small keys. The game assumes you have infinite money. The game assumes you have infinite small keys if you can reach a shop. And so most of these things get significantly simpler, for better or for worse. It makes it a lot easier to track the logic, but it also, I think, makes it a lot harder to keep track of where the seed wants you to go. Because if I am 12 minutes into the seed and I find my 5th pod key, I have a pretty good sense that I'm finding pod and I'm finding something deep in it. If I'm in Retrance and I find my 6th small key, I'm going to sit there and shrug my shoulders. I don't care for Retrance much as a mode, but I think it can make you... The thing to keep in mind when you're thinking about Retrance is that the small keys are basically always in logic, and so it just greatly simplifies the entrances, or the logic, which can really help you track it a little bit better. But it does also mean that you're much more likely to be forced to do something like, I'm going to traverse Turtle Rock from back to front because, hey, I have all the keys for it. Or, I'm 2 minutes into the seed, I better go get something out of Harmless Hellway. Cool. Mr. Byer, how important is it to clean up Sphere 1 entrances? That is another really, really good question, and I think that is a... So, I mentioned in kind of the like second phase of the game of the doing dungeons, and especially once I have the mirror, a lot of times I'm looking to clean up those Sphere 1 entrances that I may have missed or orphaned in that same time. And having a flute helps. Having a mirror helps, where like, if I have this rock down here, and I will actually play the game for a second. If I have this rock down here, and I have orphaned it, I'm probably not going to make a one-off walk to it without a flute. But if I have a mirror and I'm down here checking Swamp Palace, that is a phenomenal time to very, very naturally and efficiently route in. So usually if I am forced to orphan an entrance early, I do not make an effort to go back to it. Unless I am naturally there. Unless I am in a position where, like, I am looking at things, I'm like, I don't have a dungeon or anything I want to do, and I am missing very, very valuable entrances. I'm still looking for Ganon's Tower. I am still looking for a crystal dungeon that I need to beat, or even just a loaded pendant dungeon. I am still looking for Hype Cave. All of those things are things that can send me back to orphan entrances. But absent something like that, you're usually going to find that I will usually try to wait until I can be efficient about my rerouting. Like, I'm not necessarily going to one-off the rock over by Ice Rod Cave because I'm going to try to do it when I come back to do Dark Shopping Mall and Mirror. Conversely, in there's a second sort of corollary on that, which is that very, very frequently when I do that, I am going to specifically try not to route to places where there are orphans in the light world, in the dark world, if I don't have a mirror and I can't avoid it. You obviously can't always avoid it, but I do try to keep that in mind, and I do try to bring myself the opportunity to route things in normally instead of just saying, hey, I'm going to go brute force this. Mr. Byer asked, and it was answered, but can you be in a situation where you might be in Go mode but don't have enough dungeon price info? That is an absolute yes. Usually my suggestion on this is to kind of play pseudo like you're in Go mode. So if I'm maybe in Go mode and I have 2 more checks that are right in front of me, I will probably finish them, but I'm going to go straight to finding out the answer to the question of, am I in Go mode? I distinctly... Yes, I did, wall kicks. Distinctly, I remember a seed where my go mode was killing Trinex and finding out that it was my last crystal. And I had absolutely no idea if that was the thing. Cool. Let's see. There was another question that was in there. How do you handle dark caves? Bright Eye 77. This may not be the most lovely question of all, but honestly, the answer is practice. That's not true. There's actually two answers. One is practice. There are items that will help. Swords obviously help. Like I can do caves like that. Like I can do this old man cave with absolutely nothing from either direction. I've done it so many times and I've just gotten used to it. That being said, I actually do have a tab up on my Chrome where I have, hey, here are dark maps. And if I'm doing some of the ones that I'm less comfortable on, I actually will bring up a dark map. And it's especially useful for me because I can't visualize pictures in my head. I have a condition where I literally can't do that. So actually having a map open for me helps a lot for that. And is a super reasonable thing to do if you can actually fit the screen real estate to do. But really it's just a lot of practice, and like as you play more you just kind of get used to it. Like I'm pretty sure in the last game of the Crosskeys finals, Wally and I both went through Dark Death Mountain Descent without a lamp like 2 or 3 times, and it's just we've done it a lot. And there isn't a single golden trick. Like there are some rooms that have tricks and things that can help you do it. Let me actually quickly show. I have the lamp now, so I can't really fix it, or I guess I could open the practice hack if I wanted to. But like, let me show you what I. So I went through Dark Cross, and I can I'll just sort of walk through. Hey, how did I get through Dark Cross Dark when I was doing it? And I'm paying no attention, so I'm just walking to every guard that I can possibly see. After that, I'm going to sort of look at the next question, which is how do you balance play behind logic/repairing logic in situation where the logic repair may or may not be required? That is you're hitting great questions, Maniacal. The kind of sad answer. Sorry, I probably should have started with this dark room. But yeah, so I'll come up here. I literally will hold. So from the entrance, I will literally hold up and right. Even if I don't have a sword, even if I don't have a sword, and as I get here, I'll spam A. If I don't have a sword, I'll spam A, because as I get here, you will hit this pot, and so you will lift up this pot, and you will see the heart, and that tells me exactly where I am. And then at that point, I know I just kind of have to go up and get to this area. So like that is a trick to get through the room. This one doesn't really have a trick. You kind of just have to know how to get through. But similarly, this one, I will hold up and right until I'm confident I have gone enough. Then I will hold down and right, and I will give myself plenty of time to get flush with this torch. I will hold up and right until I'm here, and then I will walk to the left, and you will always hit this chest. And then and then at that point, you kind of have to do some manual adjusting of this. But let's see, you said more of like, when do you go through them and when do you mark and move on? It depends on your comfort level, and if you're not comfortable with it, then you should greatly penalize dark caves. If you are comfortable with dark caves, then I treat them like any other connector, where I will take what feels like the best one to me if I am looking to take a connector, and if I am not looking to take a connector, I won't take it. The one exception to this is the Old Man Rescue, which if I have not rescued the Old Man, I will take about 98% of the time, because I am personally addicted to going in and getting that third starting point for me. And yes, Leaf is correct. There are other setups as well that you can do. I like this one because it literally requires nothing. And so I like to at least be able to do the base thing that doesn't require things. But yeah, especially if your mobility options are bad, getting an extra save and quit can save you tens of minutes in a seed if you get lucky with good placement. Cool. Let's see. Mr. Beyer made a comment. Sometimes I like to say no logic, which also has wild maps, is sometimes the best way to figure out the prize of the dungeon is just finish it. I absolutely agree. I don't usually care if something's a map or a compass, particularly in the mid game, or a pen and a crystal until the mid game. In the end game, I will start caring, but most of the time, I feel like I figure out my third pendant by that third pendant falling from the sky. And you know what? That happens. I am also going to agree with Kamarai that if you're not comfortable with dark caves, unless they end your route nicely and you're not comfortable with them, move on with it and don't worry too much about it. You can go back with a lamp. The game will never require otherwise. Awesome. Silver L, that was a great question. What cost would you place on bunny walking? Is it normally a last resort since our logical actions as a bunny are so limited? I am glad you asked. I am pretty much a certified bunny walking hater, but the cost I place on bunny walking differs based on my equipment. In particular, if I have the mirror, I value bunny walking more. If I have the boots, I value bunny walking significantly less. Which is a very fancy way of saying if I have the mirror, bunny walking can be required more often than it's going to. The other thing that can make bunny walking more valuable, and this is hard to track when you're first starting, but hopefully it can at least get things in, is that if there are entrances out there that can have bunnyable items. So off the top of my head, hammer pegs, sick kid, potion shop if you've turned in the mushroom, the front dude in hype cave. Asked me at the time I was on Restream when the front dude in Hype Cave had the hookshot in Swamp Palace and Dark Lumberjack, or in Hookshot Cave had a bottle and Dark Lumberjack had my Moon Pearl with Sick Kit. It is not normally a last resort for me. Usually if I am doing... I hate that dude. Don't get me started on that dude. Usually if I am doing a route and I get sent into the Dark World, I am not instantly going to save and quit. But I am not usually going to make sure that I check the entire area. So for comparison's sake, and I'm going to quickly, I can't reset. Hold on, I need to actually just kill RetroArch and reopen it, because I'm going to open the practice hack here. You might have just seen that my name is Kevin. Surprise. It's not a thing I hide. Congratulations. This is going to bonk me, is it? What am I doing? Okay. Okay, dude. But yeah, I generally do not feel like full bunny routing tends to worth it, but like Kamare, I tend to do a lot of, hey, I'm going to check one entrance. And this can vary, again, based on what I have. If I have the mirror, I'm going to be a lot more likely to bunny walk. This is also why I do things like, hey, I'm going to check what item is on race game, because I need to know, do I need to bunny walk? Is there something valuable here for me to worry about? Yeah, if you have boots, bunny walking has a significantly higher cost than if you don't have boots. If you don't have boots, the cost of bunny walking is basically you're leaving orphans behind that you can't do. If you do have boots, the cost is, instead of doing this, you are doing this. I hope you like that 5 seconds of silence, representing the 5 extra seconds you would have taken bunny walking this screen instead of doing it with boots. And also things like, hey, I'm going to take deaths in Super Bunny K, or not in Super, like, I'm going to take deaths to get myself Super Bunny State. Like, those do add up over time. So usually you will see me not be particularly active in bunny walking, but like anything else, and I apologize that all my answers are conditional, but the truth is everything in this mode is actually pretty conditional. The truth is I'm going to come here and I am going to, and I apologize for all the terrible dashes. Like I said, not really focusing, but I'm going to come here and I'm going to say, you know what? Like, if I get spit out in Bumper Cave early, I'm going to grab the item and I'm going to come here and I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to walk to Dark Lumberjacks and I'm going to save and quit. Thoughts on Skull Woods? I very rarely bunny revive Skull Woods. So in particular, when I bunny revive Skull Woods, it tends to be a very, very specific situation that usually needs the following 3 things. I need a sword. I need to not have found the back of Skull Woods. I need to not have a Skull Wood small. And hopefully I also have a fire source. If all 4 of those are correct, and I have a good chance to bunny revive Skull Woods, I'm actually maybe going to take it, because that way, if I can just pick up the key while I'm there, and I happen to find Skull Woods, and I can just beat it, and I don't have to come back, that's really nice. And so a lot of time, like when you see me bunny revive, it will usually hit those particular things. I will also bunny revive Skull Woods if I'm being spit out of the back of Skull Woods. I will very, very rarely, depending on if I feel like it, if I have the fire rod and the big key, I will do it, and then I will try to bunny pocket the fire rod shot. But that's such a niche glitch that it's so rarely useful, and I don't actually think it's all that useful. So I'm not a big fan of Skull Woods in general as a bunny, and I assumed the context was in the bunny, but Cool. Maniacal, you restated your question, and I read your question and then completely forgot to actually answer it. Which is, I did not answer the question at all. So the answer is, like everything else, it kind of depends. If I think that repairing logic is likely to lead me to success, I am more likely to try to repair logic. If repairing logic is I am missing a 6th pod key, I'm probably just going to say, you know what, I don't care. And all of this weighs on things. Like, if I'm missing 3 pod keys and I am MITs for go mode, I'm probably not following stuff that is locked by 6 pod keys, because you know what, my MITs probably lock one of those. But on the whole, I don't necessarily try too hard to repair logic. Basically, I try to repair logic if I think the item that I'm dismissing to repair logic is likely to be important. And sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't. Sometimes it is, and I do it, and I feel great. Sometimes I don't do it, and it's required, and I feel terrible. But that's kind of what I do with repairing logic. Wallkick said, what bomb jumps are useful to know in entrance that aren't bomb jumps you see in non-entrance? That's actually a great question. I didn't really cover any of this stuff. Some quick ones that I think are useful bomb jumps. You see this sometimes in non-entrance, but I think Spec Rock is a very, very useful bomb jump in... Why did I do it this way? You know what? I feel like embarrassing myself. 1 second. Yeah, okay. That was embarrassing. Alright, let's go back to this, and I'm going to actually go down the correct entrance this time. Yeah, I've been hovering like perfectly at every single one of my practice seats, and so as soon as I do this, of course, I am at absolute fucking garbage. Oh, no! I've been doing so well! I'm sorry, bleep me! I think Spec Rock Bomb Jump is probably the one that most commonly comes up. Why did I do that? I think Paradox Bomb Jump, going from... I know what I was trying to do. I was trying to add bombs to myself. Sorry. That should be enough. Paradox Bomb Jump from the item caves back across to the middle is one that I think is useful be able to do, but doesn't come up very often. I'll show what I do for Spec Rock Bomb Jump, even though this does come up sometimes. And there are some other things, which is, you see this little like black thing right here? Is I will line myself up in the middle of it, more or less. I've been in the middle like 3 times. I don't know why I'm continuing to dance. And then I will walk down. Oh, I'm in the wrong... It's the wrong black thing. Sorry, that's why it looked wrong to me. It's this black thing here sticking on the left. And then I will walk down until I am covering the entirety of this little triangle that's coming out. And I will mess up the bomb jump. Okay, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I'm not going to figure it out on the fly. But the idea is this is a useful... I know there's a tile lineup with the sword. I don't tend to do it. And if I was... You actually have to talk to this dude in NMG? This is terrible. That's why I don't play NMG. But yeah, lining up the sword with the tiles about it. There's a couple different ones. I probably was 1 pixel too far to the left. I wasn't really intending on teaching specific tech in this, and was more going through this. So I'm just going to list through the ones that I can think of, and if other people have ones that they think are useful, by all means add them. So Turtle Rock right to left bomb jump is, I think, super free. Here, I'll show you this setup because it takes absolutely no skill. That is also true with what Leaf said, is that I do try to use lineups that don't require extra things. But I think the most common one, and the one that gets used all of the time in Entrance, is Turtle Walk right to left, as I need to now add more equipment to myself. You can tell just how often I actually use the practice hack here. So bomb jump here is to go from left to right or right to left is really easy. You walk as far as you can left, face down, drop a bomb, and then hold left. Ta-da. Similarly, if you have boots, bonk and hold left. A little less common, but still can be useful, is to get this chest. There's not like a clear-cut way of doing it, but I kind of push it as high up as I can, and then I just move a slight bit to the right. And like the spec rock jump, if you do it right, you'll kind of carry yourself across the ledge that way. But yeah, Paradox Cave, Bomb Jump, Spec Rock. I'm probably losing some other ones, or I'm probably missing some other ones, but those are, I think, the ones that jump out immediately at me. If you're feeling super swaggy, the Bomb Jump in Super Bunny Cave to avoid jumping down can be super cool, but is pretty rarely actually... I mean, it's not actually useful, it's just a time save. Right side GT bomb jump is useful, but I actually think it for anyone who's actually learning stuff here, please don't practice that. There's about 20,000 better things to practice. GT left side bomb jumps can be more useful, although honestly, it's actually pretty rare for me. And actually, let me go for that. Let me go for GT actually, because that's a good one to show off very, very quickly. Spike skip should be the right chapter. Yeah. Okay. So there's two ways. So I usually don't bomb jump this without boots past office room. But with boots, obviously you can go, if you want to. I'm terrible right now. You can go 1, 2, 3, and then if you want to, you can back up. The one that I think, and this is actually useful even if you do have boots, is you come here. Oh my god, I can't one pixel movement right now. Someone in my life. There we go. So you see I have this like tiny little shred of white right beneath my feet right there. Drop the bomb, walk all the way up to the thing, and you're here. And even if you have boots, this is great because you don't have to bonk around. You do this one bomb jump and then you just dash turn and boom, you're here. Yeah, I think that covers most of the bomb jumps. I like to use Shadow lineup specifically because it's not sprite dependent, maniacal, but yes. I think I have hit everybody's questions that I have seen, and we're running a little bit past where I was intending to go for. Does anyone have last second questions before we wrap up? And as always, you're always free to DM me to post questions in Tark. You'll get tons of people who will swoop in to help you. Do you mean the bomb jump to Skullwood's chest? That's not an entrance-specific bomb jump. Oh, no. Okay, sorry, it took me a second. I realized, yeah, I got there. Okay. I'm going to show you guys how to do this once and for all. Dash up. Line up with the wall. Okay. Apparently this doesn't work in the practice hack. I call BS. I'm going to go from the start of the room because that affects the Wallmaster timing. But with the Wallmaster timing in not the practice hack, this will work literally every time. Is you walk up, you line yourself with the wall, you bomb, you torch, you fall down. You're not going to get grabbed. And so I'm going to do that slightly slower now, but I wanted to show the timing on it because the timing is important. But basically, to do the bomb jump to see how free it is, you literally, and I watch people like go up here and kill all the Gibdos all the time, and you're wasting yourself a lot of time by doing it. You literally just go here, you line up with the wall, you come out, and you drop the bomb, and that's the bomb jump. And I'm gonna get, oh wow, I'm actually surprised I didn't get grabbed. I showed you the timing just to show that you actually don't need to kill the Gibdos, but I understand that a lot of people do for the sake of clarity. Do I accept questions in my stream provided it's not a race? Yes, every and always. In fact, I accept questions in my stream even if it is a race, as long as they are general questions and not... I mean, I'm a very talkative person, so I'll usually give my thought. And yeah, if you have the fire rod, there is no reason to do this bomb jump. Like, don't do this if you have the fire rod, but like... If you don't, this is how you sequence break the back of Skullwoods and Entrance. Yep. Okay, I think that is the end of the questions that I've seen. I'm going to give it 5 or 10 more seconds, and then I'm just going to wrap it up, and I don't know if Angry Pants wants to say anything. But before I do, I'm going to make sure... Well, first off, thank you everybody for coming. I hope you learned things. If not, I hope you got to laugh at me. Or at least laugh when I found Eastern Palace. But if you still want to learn more, make sure we have the next CrossFit Boots Camp gotcha featuring Wall Kicks, who is a runner who can credibly say he is better than me after the most recent Crosskeys tournament, as I cry myself to sleep. But he'll be going on Saturday, December 9th at 5 p.m. Eastern, so just a little bit under 2 days. Yeah. And if you have other questions, feel free to DM me. Feel free to leave questions at Tark. There's a ton of us who are happy to answer these questions. Like, I love talking about this game. I think there's a lot of really interesting things, and I love watching people improve. I love watching people get better. And so if you're that kind of person and you want to go, like, I hope you can always find a group of people who are willing to help, because you almost always can. Thank you a lot. I don't think we have anything else we need to cover.